The 5:33 train from Penn Station was a sanctuary of routine. A metal tube carrying the weary souls of New York City commuters back to the quiet suburbs of Long Island. On the evening of December 7, 1993, the air inside the third car was thick with the quiet hum of conversation, the rustle of newspapers, and the rhythmic clickety-clack of the wheels on the track, the soundtrack of 1,000 unremarkable journeys. But as the train pulled away from the new Hyde Park station, a man stood up, pulled a semi-automatic pistol from his bag, and with a chilling, methodical calm, began to walk down the aisle, transforming that sanctuary into a moving tomb. In the span of just 3 minutes, 6 lives would be extinguished, 19 others would be wounded, and the collective psyche of a community would be forever scarred by an act of random, senseless violence that came to be known as the Long Island Railroad Massacre. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. Also, we're coming soon to Substack. The Long Island Railroad is more than just a transit system. It is the artery connecting Manhattan to the vast sprawl of Long Island, a daily ritual for hundreds of thousands. For the passengers on the 5:33, the day was over, and the promise of home was just minutes away. They were a cross-section of American life. Students, lawyers, fathers, mothers, all sharing the mundane intimacy of the evening commute. No one noticed the quiet, intense man, Colin Ferguson, sitting near the rear of the third car. He was a 35-year-old Jamaican immigrant, a man consumed by a deep, festering paranoia, and a long list of perceived racial and personal grievances. Ferguson had meticulously planned his attack. He was armed with a Ruger P-89 9mm pistol, purchased legally in California, and carried over 150 rounds of ammunition in a canvas bag. His target was not specific individuals, but a generalized group he believed was responsible for his failures and frustrations. He had a list of names and organizations in his pocket, a bizarre manifesto of his rage, but his true target was the world that he felt had rejected him. He waited until the train was between stations, ensuring that no one could easily escape and that the police response would be delayed. At approximately 6:18 p.m., as the train approached the Maryland Avenue station, Ferguson stood up. He chambered around and began his deadly walk from the rear of the car toward the front. He did not shout. He did not issue a warning. He simply began to fire. The sound of the gunfire was deafening in the enclosed space, a terrifying, percussive roar that instantly shattered the peace. Passengers initially froze, thinking the sound was a firecracker or a train malfunction. But the sight of blood and shattered glass quickly brought the horrifying reality into focus. Ferguson moved slowly, deliberately, aiming at the heads and torsos of the passengers seated on both sides of the aisle. He reloaded his weapon 5 times during the rampage. The mechanical click of the magazine released a brief, chilling pause in the carnage. The victims were trapped, unable to flee the narrow confines of the train car. Some dove under seats, others huddled together, and many simply sat frozen in terror, watching the barrel of the gun sweep past them. The air filled with the smell of gunpowder and the screams of the wounded. The scene was one of unimaginable chaos and heroism. Amidst the terror, a few brave individuals rose to action. Kevin Bloom, a passenger, was shot in the chest but survived. He and others, including Mark McEntee and Michael O'Connor, realized that their only chance was to rush the gunman during one of his reloads. This was a moment of pure, desperate courage, a choice between certain death and a slim chance at survival for everyone on the train. As Ferguson paused to insert a fresh magazine, the men lunged. They tackled him, wrestling the weapon away and pinning him to a seat. The struggle was fierce, but the sheer will of the survivors overpowered the gunman. They held him down, even as the train finally coasted to a stop at the Maryland Avenue station. The silence that followed the final shot was profound, broken only by the sobs of the injured and the frantic calls for help. The toll of the attack was devastating. 6 people were killed: Amy Federici, 27, James Goritsky, 51, Mi Kyung Kim, 27, Maria Teresa Pressa, 25, Scott Dennis, 48, and Richard Tiogo, 31. They were ordinary people, heading home, whose lives were stolen by a man's deranged hatred. 19 others were injured, many with life-altering wounds, both physical and psychological. The train car, now a crime scene, was a tableau of the violence, littered with spent shell casings, broken glass, and blood. The man responsible, Colin Ferguson, was immediately taken into custody. His background revealed a pattern of increasing instability and paranoia. Born in Jamaica, he had moved to the United States and struggled to find success, blaming his failures on a vast conspiracy of white devils and institutional racism. He had been fired from several jobs, evicted from his apartment, and had a history of making bizarre, threatening complaints to various agencies. His mental state was clearly deteriorating, a fact that would become the central, bizarre focus of his subsequent trial. The trial of Colin Ferguson in 1995 became a media circus, largely because Ferguson insisted on representing himself. Against the advice of the court, he dismissed his legal counsel, believing he could better argue his own case. What followed was one of the most surreal courtroom dramas in American history. Ferguson cross-examined the very people he had shot, referring to himself in the third person, and presenting a defense that was utterly detached from reality. His defense was based on the claim that he was not the shooter, but a victim of a vast conspiracy. He argued that a black box device had been implanted in him, forcing him to commit the acts, and that a mysterious co-conspirator was the real killer. He even attempted to introduce a list of 41 people he claimed were involved in the conspiracy, a list that included the governor of New York and the judge presiding over his trial. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Dennis Dillon, simply presented the overwhelming evidence, the eyewitness testimony, the recovered weapon, and Ferguson's own capture at the scene. Despite the obvious signs of severe mental illness, a court-ordered psychiatric examination determined that Ferguson was competent to stand trial, as he understood the charges against him and the nature of the proceedings. The jury ultimately rejected his delusional defense. On February 17, 1995, Colin Ferguson was convicted on all counts, including 6 counts of murder and 19 counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to 315 years and 8 months to life in prison, ensuring he would never again walk free. The Lure massacre had a profound and lasting impact. It fueled the national debate on gun control, leading to stricter laws regarding the sale of semi-automatic weapons. It also forced the LIRR and other transit authorities to reevaluate security measures, leading to increased police presence and new protocols. Most importantly, it left a legacy of trauma for the survivors and the families of the victims, a wound that time has struggled to heal. The memory of the 533 train remains a stark reminder of how quickly the ordinary can turn into the horrific, and the enduring courage of those who fought back. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.